Welcome, deep divers. Today, we're diving into a concept that, well, it gets tossed around a lot. The whole what goes around comes around thing.
Right. Seems simple on the surface.
But as the Dalai Lama himself famously noted, of all Buddhist concepts, karma is probably the most difficult one to really, truly grasp.
It really is complex.
So what if that common phrase barely scratches the surface? What if karma is actually this profound, dynamic, and, incredibly empowering force? That's kind of our mission today. We want to journey beyond those, let's say, often simplistic ideas and really unpack the nuanced meaning of karma.
Yeah, get into the details.
Exactly. We're going to explore it not as some mystical, fatalistic decree, but more like a practical, rational force, something that's actually shaping your everyday life and the world around you.
Okay.
We'll look at how it's genuinely defined, how it actually works, and importantly, what it truly means for your freedom and responsibility.
That sounds good.
And to help us navigate these deep waters, we've pulled together an amazing collection of insights. We're drawing from figures like Bhikkhu Bodhi, John Chosen Bays, Jeffrey Hopkins, Judy Leaf, Tony Bernhard, loads more.
A really rich set of perspectives.
Definitely. So settle in, maybe grab a coffee, and get ready to challenge some assumptions.
It's interesting, though, how pervasive that basic idea of cause and effect already is in our culture, even if we don't always label it karma.
True.
Thich Nhat Hanh captures this really well, doesn't he? Describing karma as the seeds we plant in our minds that will bear fruit as suffering or happiness. That's a natural starting point, I think.
Absolutely. A good way in. But then the common understanding often takes a sharp turn into, well, misunderstanding, right?
Yeah.
So many people equate karma with fate, or even worse, like a system of blame and punishment. You hear things like, oh, you're sick, must be your bad karma.
Oof, yeah. That comes up a lot.
And Judy Leaf specifically warns against this. She calls it a deadly combination, linking current situations, especially things like trauma or illness, with this blame-punishment mentality.
That's such a critical point, because it leads to that question. If someone's suffering, does karma mean they deserve it?
Right.
And Tony Bernhard is really clear on this. Karma is not an external justice system where we're somehow doomed to suffer. It's just not about cosmic payback.
Okay.
Trali Rinpoche echoes this too. He stresses that, yeah, we might have a karmic inheritance, but it's not some fatalistic doctrine. It doesn't mean we just passively sit back and, wait for things to unfold.
We're not stuck.
Not at all. He says we actually have real choice in our affairs.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey Hopkins, he goes so far as to say it's a huge mistake to see karma as being simply deterministic.
Wow, okay. That's a really important distinction then. It's not about being punished for past wrongs in some inevitable way.
Not in that simplistic sense, no.
So if karma isn't fate or blame, how should we think about it?
Well, Jan Chosen Bays offers this really compelling analogy. She describes karma as being like the laws of physics.
Oh, interesting. How so?
She says it's almost mathematically precise, an exact force in our lives. It's impersonal, not some cosmic judge figuring out sentences, just cause and effect operating.
Like gravity. It just is.
Exactly. And Andrew Lenski points out that in the early Buddhist teachings, karma was largely about our own psychological processes. Less about why an earthquake happens and more about the fact that if you act with hatred, you're likely to experience hatred or dislike in return.
Ah, so it's more about the internal consequences, the mental states we create and experience.
Precisely. It's a natural internal consequence of our actions, our intentions.
And it's funny, this isn't just some ancient dusty concept, is it? Jeffrey Hopkins points out how this kind of impersonal, precise force resonates even today. In our daily lives, pop culture. Well, he mentions things like the characters on Seinfeld. Remember the finale? They kind of paid for all their selfish actions. Or even the whole idea behind the movie Flatliners. There's this sense that actions have consequences.
Yeah, you see that pattern repeated. We seem to instinctively grasp this cause and effect thing, even if we don't call it karma.
Exactly. So for you listening right now, maybe the big insight here is to try and shed those common misconceptions. Karma isn't some mystical punishment system. It's more like a rational, understandable force that governs how your actions create your experience.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so understanding karma as this rational force is kind of layer one. But to really get how it works, we need to dive into its absolute core, right? Which is intention.
Yes, intention. This is key.
What did the Buddha actually teach about that? Why is it so central?
Well, the Buddha's definitive statement, it really leaves no room for doubt. He said, intention, I tell you, is karma. Intending, one does karma by way of body, speech, and intellect.
Intention is karma.
That's the core insight. It's the real game changer. Jeffrey Hopkins even calls intention the very heart of karma. It's like the engine driving the whole process.
Okay, that really clarifies things. I like how Toni Bernhard illustrates this. She talks about distinguishing between just the bare behavior and the intention behind it. Like her example of someone wielding a knife. The physical action itself is the same, but the intention that completely changes the karmic outcome. Life-saving surgery versus, well, an attack.
Total different karma.
Or yelling, "Don't move." Is the intention kindness stopping someone from stepping in front of a car? Or is it ill will holding them at gunpoint? The intent changes everything.
Indeed. And the Buddha actually identified 6 primary intentions that tend to drive our actions.
Okay.
There's goodwill, compassion, and generosity. Those are the non-harmful ones. And then their opposites: ill will, cruelty, and greed, the harmful ones.
So they mirror each other.
Exactly. And what's powerful is that they act like a practical test. You can ask yourself, is this action alleviating suffering or intensifying it?
Yeah.
And this applies even to our thoughts, which is kind of mind-blowing.
How so?
Well, thinking about, say, the homeless, that thought could be an act of profound compassion. Or it could be a thought completely fueled by disdain. The intention behind the thought determines its karmic quality.
Right. So it's not just what we do, but why we do it, down to the level of thought. So how does this actually shape us over time?
It's really about forming our character moment by moment. Every intentional action, even just a thought, it plants what Toni Bernhard calls a behavioral seed.
A seed.
Yeah. And as the Buddha said, paraphrasing slightly, whatever a person frequently thinks and ponders upon, that becomes the inclination of his mind.
Ah, okay. So repetition matters.
Hugely. It means if you repeatedly choose kindness, if you intend kindness over and over, you are quite literally, as Toni Bernhard puts it, turning yourselves into a person who is kind, compassionate, and generous. You build that inclination.
Okay, that makes sense. It leads right into this idea of habits, doesn't it? Habits and maybe habit energies.
Exactly. Andrew Lenski explains it really clearly. Our mental states, anger, love, whatever, they directly affect our behavior. And those behaviors then lay down a disposition, or you could say a character trait.
So it creates a groove, almost.
Sort of. If you constantly water the seeds of anger by reacting angrily, you just become more inclined to anger. It becomes easier, more automatic. But if you cultivate kindness, you strengthen those kind responses.
And Larry Ward brings in the Yogacara tradition here, right? With the storehouse consciousness.
Yes, exactly. This idea that these seeds or habit energies reside in this deeper consciousness, and they're constantly influencing our perceptions, our judgments, how we see the world. He says, like, every action nourishes seeds that grow from a depth consciousness.
Wow. Deep stuff.
And Rita Gross just brings it back to the fundamental importance of habit itself. She notes that when you repeat actions, they just become much easier to repeat. It's not some abstract cosmic ledger book. It's this continuous internal process happening right within our own minds, shaping who we become from moment to moment.
So, okay, bringing this back to you, the listener, what does this understanding really mean practically?
Well, I think it offers an incredibly powerful lever for change.
How?
Because if intention is key, and habits are formed through repetition, then mindfulness practice becomes crucial. It helps us become aware of those automatic, reactive tendencies. It creates that gap, as Rita Gross calls it.
The gap.
Yeah, a space between the stimulus and the response, where we can actually pause and examine our intentions before we act.
Ah, so we can choose differently.
Precisely. You aren't just a puppet controlled by your past karma. You are actively shaping your future character, your future experiences. In every single conscious moment, you have incredible agency. That's empowering.
That really shifts the perspective. Okay, so if we connect this power of intention and habit forming to the bigger picture, traditionally, karma is what keeps being stuck, right, on the ever-turning wheel of rebirth, as Bhikkhu Bodhi puts it.
That's the traditional understanding, yes.
Yeah.
The Buddha's enlightenment experience apparently included recollecting his own past lives and also seeing how other beings are reborn according to their actions, whether into realms of misery or heavenly worlds, all based on their conduct.
Now, for many of us, maybe especially in the West, this idea of literal past lives and future rebirths, it can be a difficult concept to fully get on board with.
Understandably so.
We're often conditioned, aren't we, to think of the mind as just well, the brain, something that ceases when the body dies.
Right, that's a common viewpoint. Jeffrey Hopkins acknowledges that skepticism.
But even with that challenge, the underlying principle of continuity, that seems compelling. Jan Chozen Bays offers a really interesting, almost scientific perspective on this. She compares the dispersion of our physical elements after death. Atoms returning to the earth, to the transformation of our mental and emotional energy.
Right.
She asks, if you die full of anger, where does that energy go? She says, think about walking into a room where people have just had a huge argument. Even if they're quiet now, you can sense it. The energy is palpable.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Her point is this energy isn't just destroyed, it transforms. It continues in some way.
And this idea of continuity is really crucial, isn't it? Bhikkhu Bodhi makes a strong argument here. He says, look, if we recognize some kind of underlying principle of moral justice in the universe,
Like things should balance out somehow.
sort of,
Yeah.
then there must be some form of continuity beyond death. Otherwise, where's the accountability? He uses the really stark examples of Adolf Hitler and Mother Teresa. If death is the absolute end, if it's purely materialistic, then, well, there are no ultimate consequences for their vastly different actions and impacts. But karmic continuity suggests that actions do produce effects that extend beyond one lifespan, influencing future existences.
Right. It addresses that sense of, well, justice needing to play out somehow, even if not immediately. So how exactly is this karmic energy thought to be carried forward?
Well, Bhikkhu Bodhi talks about a stream of consciousness, like a continuous flow of moments, passing on this accumulated storage of impressions, experiences, potentially memories, and karmic deposits.
From moment to moment and life to life.
Yes. And he says it's maintained by these latent tendencies, ignorance, and this deep craving for new existence.
And Jan Chozen Bays connects this to the three poisons, right? Clinging, aversion, and ignoring.
She does. She says these are what bond human existence together moment by moment, creating this continuous karmic stream. But the good news, she emphasizes, is that through practice, we can create that gap we talked about.
And pause.
Exactly. And potentially stop transmitting these karmic streams, which has huge implications, like maybe breaking cycles of abuse, not just for ourselves, but for future generations too.
That's powerful. And Jeffrey Hopkins also mentions specific mechanisms like the mind basis of all or a subtle mental consciousness as ways karma might be carried.
Different traditions have different models for it, yeah.
So while the literal interpretation of past lives might be a hurdle for some, this concept of moment-to-moment rebirth seems really useful. Andrew Olensky and Larry Ward talk about this.
How does that work?
It emphasizes the continuous impact of our actions within this single lifetime. How who you are now is being constantly reborn from the previous moment based on your choices. Even if, like Rita Gross says, maybe about literal past lives, I don't know.
Acknowledging the uncertainty.
The core idea of continuous energy and this moment-to-moment transformation really underscores the immense power of your choices right now to affect your future self, your future experiences. It gives a framework for seeing how you're shaped and how you can shape yourself continuously.
It keeps the focus on the present moment's potential.
Exactly. And that actually leads us to something even more profound, maybe even a bit mind-bending.
Okay.
The ultimate goal in Buddhism, it isn't actually just to accumulate good karma to get a better rebirth.
Right. That's often misunderstood.
Ajahn Buddhasa talks about the karma that ends karma. What does that mean?
Well, the idea is that even positive karma, while better than negative, still leads to rebirth within samsara, this cycle of suffering and dissatisfaction.
Why? If it's good karma.
Because it's still rooted in attachment, even if it's attachment to positive outcomes, and it still reinforces a sense of a separate self that's experiencing those outcomes. True liberation, nirvana, means transcending the entire system of karma altogether.
Wow. So enlightenment isn't about getting a perfect score on your karmic report card. It's about graduating from the whole school.
That's a great analogy. Rita Gross and Andrew Olensky define enlightenment literally as the state of producing no karma.
That sounds almost paradoxical, doesn't it? Because someone like the Buddha clearly had a massive positive effect on the world.
It does seem tricky.
Yeah.
But as Larry Ward explains it, this enlightened mind, while acting, leaves nothing in its wake, in the sense of creating new karmic ties, positive or negative, that bind them to the cycle. The actions become purely spontaneous, selfless, arising from wisdom and compassion, not from ego or craving.
Okay, so how does one actually get there, to this state beyond karma?
This is where Tulku Thondup emphasizes that you need both merit, which is like skillful means, good actions, and wisdom, the understanding of emptiness, the true nature of reality.
You need both.
Absolutely. He quotes Chandrakirti saying they're indispensable, like two wings are to a bird's ability to fly. You can't just have one.
Why not? Can't you just meditate on emptiness?
Well, apparently not effectively. Merit, which comes from practices like generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, tranquility, this helps open our hearts and dissolve the ego clinging. Without that foundation, just meditating on emptiness might not, as Sarya and Gampopa warned, lead you through the sublime path or allow great wisdom to take birth in you. It might just be an intellectual exercise.
So the merit clears the ground so wisdom can take root.
That's a good way to think about it. It's all about tackling that core problem, grasping itself. Nagarjuna, Shantideva, they identify this as the absolute root of suffering and the whole cycle of samsara. Merit helps loosen that grasping, helps release those negative emotions that fuel the cycle.
Some Kappa even said if there are no negative emotions, karma won't cause rebirth.
Exactly, and Atisha had that powerful teaching. If someone claims they realize emptiness, but they haven't lessened their hatred or attachment, their claims are basically mere words. The proof is in the transformation.
Okay, this section, it really feels like a profound aha moment. The deepest wisdom isn't just about being a good person and racking up good karma points.
No, it goes deeper.
It's about understanding the fundamental nature of existence itself, this emptiness, this lack of inherent self, in order to achieve complete freedom from suffering. It really challenges you, the listener, to consider the whole mindset you're cultivating, not just the individual actions.
The underlying view.
So if we bring this all back down to earth, connect it to our daily lives and maybe even society, how does this view of karma play out? Is it empowering or disempowering?
Well, the sources are really clear on this. David Loy asserts that karma is not a fatalistic doctrine. In fact, it is difficult to imagine a more empowering teaching.
Empowering, how so?
Because it places the power squarely in our hands. Jeffrey Hopkins calls it an absolute call to work very hard for social betterment and for the betterment of oneself. It implies agency.
And it definitely pushes back against just passively accepting things, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Traleg Rinpoche is very clear. Yes, we inherit certain karmic tendencies, but that doesn't mean we simply wait or have to remain this way. He insists we always have real choice in our affairs. Jeffrey Hopkins even warns against that pitfall of thinking, oh, well, it's my karma. There's nothing I can do.
That's just a misunderstanding then.
A big one, yeah.
Okay, and how does this connect to bigger societal issues, social justice, for example?
Bhikkhu Bodhi expands on this quite compellingly. He describes how core Buddhist principles, derived from this universal law of righteousness, the Dhamma, can actually serve as kind of blueprint for establishing social and political justice.
A blueprint? Like what?
He refers to the ancient Buddhist ideal of the ideal king, the Kakavati Raja. This wasn't just about personal virtue. The king had obligations, providing protection, keeping the country crime-free, and crucially, giving wealth to the poor to alleviate poverty. These are principles, he suggests, that can inform modern governance.
Interesting. So ethical principles derived from Dharma can guide societal structures.
And Jan Chozen-Bays takes it even further, in a way. She frames the way of liberation itself, teaching the Dharma, helping people free their own minds as the most fundamental way to help relieve suffering in the world. She calls it the ultimate social justice, implying that changing consciousness is the root solution.
Wow. So internal transformation has external ripple effects.
That seems to be the idea. And it prompts us, as Rita Gross suggests, to think about karma beyond the level of self-interest, to act for the greater good.
Which feels increasingly urgent now.
It does. Andrew Linsky talks about the global challenge of dealing with the past karma of our species. He emphasizes this urgent need for altruism, for us to consciously outgrow those primitive selfish instincts that have, gotten us into collective messes like environmental crises or conflict.
And Larry Ward brings in this really interesting concept of I-making or identity making.
Yeah, tell us about that.
He points out how solidifying and reifying these group identities, national, corporate, ethnic, can cause immense societal suffering. Things like war, poverty, ignorance often stem from clinging to these collective I's.
So the same ego-clinging process, just scaled up to the group level.
Exactly. And Rita Gross agrees, urging us to challenge that assumption that identity is just a given, fixed thing. We need to recognize our agency in molding identity, both personal and collective, and combat that pervasive subject-object duality that fuels karma and suffering at all levels.
It's about seeing the constructed nature of these divisions.
Right. So this whole section really highlights how relevant karma is to the big challenges of our modern world. It encourages you, listening, to reflect. How do your actions, your intentions contribute to these larger collective karmic streams? And how can your own personal transformation actually lead to profound and meaningful social impact?
It connects the personal and the collective very deeply.
Well, we have definitely taken quite the journey today, haven't we?
We certainly have covered a lot of ground.
We've unpacked karma, trying to move beyond that simple what goes around comes around. We've seen it as this precise, dynamic force, really driven by intention, not by some external fate. We've explored how it shapes our character, literally moment by moment, through habits and inclinations, how it's intricately linked to this idea of a continuum of energy, whether you understand that as literal rebirth across lifetimes or as this constant moment-to-moment transformation within this life.
Both powerful ways to think about continuity.
And ultimately, we've seen how this understanding points toward a path of complete liberation from suffering and implies this deep, empowering responsibility we have for the welfare of all beings, not just ourselves.
It really does tie it all together. And as Andrew Walensky reminds us, quite starkly, we are going to inherit the consequences of what we do with our minds here and now.
That really lands, doesn't it?
And Andy Carr adds another powerful thought. Karma never fades away. The seeds we plant will eventually ripen.
So maybe the final thought for you to take away is this. If every single intention, every thought, every word, every action you take today creates a seed that will bear fruit someday, how does knowing that, really knowing that, change your most immediate choice right now? What intentional seed will you choose to plant next? Not just for your own future happiness, perhaps, for the future of the world you inhabit.